completely take the tab away is one of the things that we're looking to do. And we've got it in the design stages, but essentially what we are looking to do for an author experience, because if we put a bunch of tabs in there, people aren't going to click the tabs. We can make them very specific things, but they're not going to do it. So what we want to do is within that component, we have all the information there. So everything that we want is within the one tab, all in one panel, essentially. And whether there's a scroll bar on the side that they need to go to, they still have to scroll down and click that OK button. And that's one of the big things that we wanted to do for an authoring experience is have everything right in front of them. Don't have to click around all over the place. And some of the dialogue text for non-technical people can be very confusing. And one of them is, I believe it's the list component, where you can choose different ones, and if you're not really familiar with the system, you can get lost, and how do I do this and do that? So one of the big things is very friendly text, and also inline help. So they click the help button, and they get a help video. Is one of the things that we want to do. So we're looking to really have a very rich web authoring experience within the component, within the environment. That doesn't mean that they have to put a help desk ticket in to do something. As much as we can put in that component.
So you're backing the dialogues and your JSON.
Yes.
So basically, we're finding ourselves with a critical eye at case-by-case usage. You go, this is a great step in the right direction, but boy, it could be better. Because, of course, the environment, XJS, 2 versions back or whatever that is, it's just not modern. It's not even those icons, why is that little 3-box thing? This is nonsense. So we're looking at every piece of this, and given that we have, again, hundreds of people that don't know what they're doing, we think it's worth our time. We're trying not to overlay the editing environment too much, but at the component level, we're taking full charge of it, I would say, and really dialing in those dialogues and building our own widgets to put as text fields where it makes sense. Instead of putting percentages for columns, as easy as it is for us, it's amazing how authors don't understand that. So we'll put pictures, and you'll select a picture, and we're just looking at all those elements now.
That's a really good point. Did you overhaul the layout components to use the Bootstrap?
We are using layout components. Oh, you mean like in the sidekick?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can show you a picture of what we're going to do. We've redesigned a prototype. We haven't done it yet.
What version are you using?
5.6.
Okay, then you're using Bootstrap already.
Yeah, we're using Bootstrap, and our HTML is all Bootstrap. We are running into conflicts. We haven't gone back. Some of our class or styles are now selecting editing styles, and now there's change the conflicts, and we are using Bootstrap too. So that's the issue.
So which environment are we talking about?
Well, if you have ProShare, you can it's in the wiki too, what the sidekick looks like.
Okay.
How many components making?
Oh, we have a goal. I mean, when I talked to all the schools, they said, "Oh, we ended up with 120," and they said, "Don't do that." And I said, "Yeah, that's good." So we're trying to limit ourselves to 20 or less. We're going to try really hard.
Number of components, 20 or
For
less?
editing components, yeah.
Are you saying that each school has their own set of developers?
I'm talking about, other universities.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, other universities. Whenever I talk to people who've implemented this other universities, ask what would you do differently? They would say, well, we would try to avoid having 50 templates and 120 components.
Right.
It's a nightmare to manage.
Okay.
We want to have some because if you guys have used it, you know that components kind of have their own life cycle. Like you don't invest so much in overlays. You do something, you learn about it, and then you might want to rev it. Well, if you have 120 of those, there's no way you can do that. 20, it's hard enough. So we actually have started, what is our number one component? Text. I mean, unfortunately for us, that's the number one component. So we've got to nail that. So we spent a long time, putting in the field dialogues. We're going to change the image dialogue, for instance. You right-click and there's no alt image. Starting to get in there and really make that thing rock. And we basically, the way we're doing this is, we're not usability experts necessarily, but we're going out to the WordPresses of the world. We're going out to Wix.com. We're going to these places that have already solved these usability issues. And we're just saying, let's make sure the rich text editor does that and nothing but that. In our sidekick, let's organize things the way a human thinks, not general and other. And start to input icons that make sense. Because the people that focus on UX, it's night and day between what CQ gives us. As good as it is, the elements of design need to be, and usability need to be improved. And we're aware that this is only about a year to 2 long value because of the change in Granite. But we can't go live with stuff like it is. I mean, that's our opinion. So, in our environment. So we have to make the investment.
I can't remember what URL it is, but I got something else. But to kind of add to what Mark's saying, is a lot of what we do is text, it's content. So if you've looked at everything that's in the sidekick over there, there's lots of things that out of the gate we're not going to use. And it's just, it's overkill for our environment. Now, some of them we might end up using on down the road, but it's when we get to that point or if somebody comes to us with a requirement. Because what we really don't want to do within that sidekick is somebody goes in there and there's 50 different components to choose from and they go, what is it that I'm going to do? We want to really, like Mark said, we want to narrow it down to what the kind of the nuts and bolts is that they need to do to get their work done, and kind of the good add wins that give them more functionality with that environment. And having in the sidekick where it says text, and they click that heading, and it gives them text editor components. One of the sites that I'll show you, we have the idea of featured content. So what we had done for one of our pilot sites is we built 4 different feature text components. So feature text that goes horizontally, feature text that goes vertically, feature text with an image. And that was to get this pilot site example going. Oh, there you go. So this, to continue with what I was going with, is we did that for the pilot site, and then our users looked at it, and we reevaluated it, and went, why do we really need 4 different components that do very similar things? Why don't we just have a feature component that's got inline examples of how it will look based on your selection, and have that experience all within one, rather than just looking at the sidekick that says feature horizontal, feature vertical, and they really don't understand what it does, so they drag it in, open it up, and no, that's not the one I want, so they right-click delete it, they drag another one in. Well, they know they want to do featured content, so they just really need to drag that one in, and that whole experience for them is within that one component. And that's from a user experience, and I've been doing this a very long time, that getting them from the get-go is very important. So you want to have a very easy to use environment for them. You want to train them so that they understand, because if they get into that environment and they get lost, they're not going to do what it is that you want them to do. And as I mentioned, we've got a lot of static content within our environment. We want them to have a good experience to go in and update things so that they drive more traffic to their sites. So really building out the components that goes, wow, this is what I want to do. I see it all within this one panel. I can select what it is I want. I can get a preview of what it's going to look like. I can change that to really do this, and then I can click OK, and then boom, it's right on my page. That's very important to what it is that we're trying to do. So as you can see, we've got this idea of the general topic heading. So text, you click on that. We've got to update this a little bit because the feature content wasn't going to roll out. But you can see where we want to have these main headings, click on it by images, and it expands. And got a nice little friendly icon there. But that's it. Now this is just an example rendering. We haven't decided on all of this, but you can kind of get the idea. You open up the Sidekick now, and you can add in 50 zillion things there. And from a user perspective, if you actually went in and enabled everything, they would get lost. So really what we want to do is, concise what it is that we offer them. And if they have a business need, they can obviously come to us and say, hey, we'd like to do this. Do we have an out-of-the-box component that does what they want to do? Fine, we can enable it for their site, train them on it, and away they go. Or in the case of, we'd really like it to be able to do this and this, well, is there a component that sort of does it, so we can take that and expand it? Or do we need to develop it from scratch? Is where we lie with that.
So in all these, when you have like the image and excerpt is kind of an image in freeform text pretty much. Did you just use inheritance and inherit the image component and the rich text component, or did you just start from scratch for that picture?
Using an existing component. So from the get-go, one of the things that we decided upon, and I think we're reinforcing this very much, is if it's out of the box and we can just expand that, that's what we want to do. I mean, we really don't want to have to build things from scratch, because it might work for one person and then somebody else comes to us and they need something else and somebody else needs something else. And then if we have all these different components that kind of do similar or the same things, or they're completely custom from the ground up.
So the customizations that you've done, how do you have a evolution plan where you know which components are going to change in what ways? Do you have a roadmap?
Mark could probably answer that.
Yeah, we challenged the teams for, say, our top 10 components that are in use to basically have a release cycle that will go out a year and a half of different features.
Building on the previous comment, though, you adapted some of the components in a special way, so you extended, say, the foundation list to merge all the tabs together in one panel, say.
Correct.
So you know that when the application evolves to 5.6.2, you're going to have to look at that code,
Right.
adapt. So
Well, the development answer actually, the development answer is we're actually not overlaying like that too much. We are, I think what Jason, you probably meant in development terms, is that we're actually just lifting the code out and we're building things around it. We're not, so all of these things sit in apps, Stanford Medicine components. So they're not overlaying in Foundation or Libs directory or something like that. And not all things in there will be that, but the things that are unique to us that we touch, yeah. Because there's upgrade issues here, big upgrade issues, and we're sensitive to that. But I guess it's one thing. I guess I've challenged the team to optimize for the authoring experience. So that means some challenges and upgrades, so be it. But at least we're going into it. We're documenting everything that we are overlaying, so we know what to test when that inevitability happens. I mean, we think potentially, obviously, if there's bug fixes or hot fixes, we'll go forward. But our next big upgrade might be even into Granite, where we have to rebuild a lot of this stuff. The editing environment has a ways to go yet, from what I've seen, but we'll be beta testing some of that shortly, and we'll see where it's at. So the way I characterize this work is we're doing 3 or 4 things differently. One is we're really grouping things by things that look like content types to an author. And as we looked across, again, at these cloud services, these are the types of organizations they use. It was not tool-centric, it was not general and other, it wasn't generic, it was very specific around types of content. So that was number one. Then the iconography, we had to make it more semantic. And this is fairly easy to overlay, it's just a bunch of CSS generally. So even I, as a non-developer, implemented most of this on my own local box by overlaying the CSS. So using the typical flat icons. And then the third thing is renaming Sidekick. And again, that's just a CSS overlay. But again, Sidekick means nothing to my users, right? These are site builder tools or something. I don't even know if that's right, but certainly not Sidekick. And then the last thing was, we need to, what is this stuff? What is an image and excerpt? We probably know what it is, but do my authors? Maybe not. So let's inject some JavaScript and make sure we have popovers that show what it is, show an example, and then link out to, So this is Jason's point about wherever users are, injecting help so that they can quickly find out, what is this thing? How do I take advantage of it? Because as intuitive as it is to many of us, we're actually continually surprised how unintuitive it is to the average non-technical user. It's really surprising to me, but it is what it is, and so we're investing in that kind of quality, or that help, embedded help.
And it's very important because, as I mentioned, we have a pilot site that we have out right now. And if I can get to it, did you plug? Do I need to plug back into this?
Just push the button, like turn the computer.
So as I mentioned, we have a pilot site, which is our alumni site. So going from what we have kind of existing look of...
And it's not that black, by the way. I don't know what's going on with that.
But as you can see, they're completely different look and feel. And one of the big things that we wanted to do was differentiate ourselves, be leading edge and examples for other schools of medicines to emulate or strive towards. So we really want to lead the way in what School of Medicine sites can function as and can look like. And this is a pilot site that we just finished up with, and it's got a lot more of a bold feel. It uses our Stanford colors, and
It's all screwed up on the browser. I don't know. Text.
yeah, it's probably
Stanford Medicine.
well, there's the
Oh, we're supposed to
oh,
scroll
and
down.
and that's actually a very good point that we actually have this in IE, because one of the things that we have found out from a viewing perspective and from an authoring perspective is IE has issues.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I'm honest.
For whatever reason.
First time hearing this.
What?
So we all know that we all know that one. So obviously for our web authors, that's one of the things we've had to tell them is don't do any of your edits in IE. And I actually made that mistake when I first started editing in the environment. Was I was using IE and bouncing back to Chrome, and finally it was IE is just too much of a pain in the butt, so stick with Chrome, because it just does not function and do the experience the way that me as a technical person expects it to, and then I can only imagine the experience that my authors are going to have, which can completely turn them off. That's something that we don't want to do. But I mentioned this idea. So if you look at the page, we've got a photo banner gallery at the top. And I mentioned the idea of featured components, so these featured events. So this is one of the components that we actually customized for this particular site. And that's going to be reused throughout a lot of our sites. And this was one of the test cases. And kind of get into some of the negatives that we've experienced, because again, this was a pilot site that we were putting into place. And we're now going back in and seeing some things that don't quite work right, or from my side of the fence, the web authors go, I don't really know what this is supposed to do because I don't understand, but they've been trained on it. But it's that training, I don't use it for months, now I need to go back and learn how to do it. And as I said, this is a pilot site, so a lot of the things that we're looking to do for phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, as I mentioned, inline help, unfortunately this particular site does not have that built in at this moment. So that's one of the things that, yes?
Just, there are several questions in my mind. I'll ask one related to this one right now. So there are usually those sites, I'm assuming, already existed, the ones that you're migrating to CQ. Is that correct?
The sites that we do have will be migrating to CQ. This site right here, while the content was there, this was a complete redesign.
So the question was, are you also willing to change the design on those existing sites so that they fit your 20 components? I mean, is that because the only reason you would like to have more and more components is to make sure the site looks good, it looks neat, between everything is picture perfect, and you may have to add, for a little thing, you have to add another component. That's the only reason your list becomes 120 or something like that.
Right.
So you limit the templates, but components can grow longer because you're trying to make sure that the original design, which went through a lot of QA cycles and everything was approved, and all that stuff is imitable. Is imitated. I mean,
right.
So
it's a very good question. So we're going with new templates, new themes, new look and feel for all of our sites. Okay. And one of the things as part of the migration is we're migrating the content in, and we're giving and kind of promoting the idea of this is your opportunity to advance your site, to add more images to it, to add more functionality to it. Take your content that you haven't updated in the last 6 months. And it's a revitalization and a reimagination of our web world. Because as I mentioned, 90% of our sites are really content. So it might be one column with a bunch of text and maybe an inline image. So that's a text editor and an image component for lots of sites.
So there is no design team that approves it, says it looks good, all good, beautiful, tick, done. There is usually a separate group, completely user experience group, QA group, whatever, that says I like it. I mean,
we've been working with the community, so all of the comps that have been done have been passed through, whether they're acceptable or not. So it's not, if you think we are forcing kind of this new template, new environment on people. There's been lots of vetting across the board, lots of feedback. Images is a good example for the logo, lots of feedback with that. Fonts, colors, placement of how pages are going to look. So it's not that it's being forced, it's giving lots of feedback. Now within certain parameters, people are going to have to design within the templates, within the structure, but that meets 90% of the needs of a lot of our sites. You had a question back there?
I had a question. What was the environment of the existing sites? Are they all in one, technology, or were they?
It's a Dreamweaver contributor. And we do have WordPress sites that are out there, but really our environment is Dreamweaver contributed, is what it is.
We're going to have two models for migration of daytime sites. One is, and each will go through a life cycle of this include QAs. So we're going to have an assisted, so I'm just writing some of this stuff now. They can opt into having assistants, meaning that we'll look at their site, we may do some automation, do 80-20, and help them get everything fixed and moved around. And that'll be high touch for maybe 40 to 50 sites, our large departments. and then at some point, they, as the client, will sign off, okay, this is good, and we say, yeah, we agree. So that'll be a high touch, almost consulting. Then we will have in the middle of the summer, we're gonna create and talk about this at Summit actually, create a provisioning system where people can sign up for self-migration provision sites, and they can copy and paste all day long and move it in and use the components and rebuild from scratch with their content and the content. And then they'll tell us when they're done, and we'll turn off their own site and dump it, on DNS. So we'll have both models, frankly.
So how long does it take for you? So when you say a site, what does a site mean? And there is also a lot of infrastructure work related work that you need to do when you release a site, right? So the URL of the site being one, maybe you will reuse the same URL that you're already having, but still there is work to be done for the web server, for the resources, all a bunch of things that you have to do when you release a site. So even if you don't have any work, let's say you restricted the work for developers,
Right.
then there's no template development, there's no component development, it's only content, and my authors will come create the content, I'll publish it. But when I publish it, I still have to, releasing of the site involves a bunch of other activity, right? Is that being any pain for you, or any experience that you have?
Well, yeah, when we went live with this, there was a lot of surprises because we're having to route, our primary domains are still routed here, and we had all these things that were colliding with things here. So the day we were going live, we were opening up proxies and doing all kinds of stuff. I think we've worked out what we need to watch for. I think what we're thinking about, again, some manual and automation combination where if someone is going to activate a site for the first time, if we can track that event, we can start a workflow that triggers communications around the various people. And then there's manual work to do, like switching DNS, like double checking the certs are working, and all the proxies are open to the right place. So I think we'll create this checklist. If we can automate it through some workflow, we will. If not, we may just not allow anyone to activate, and somewhere on the welcome.html page, I'm ready, click here, and that triggers emails around to start the workflow of getting that working. So we'll figure out, we haven't figured that all out, but that's kind of our thing.
Are you planning to use one kind of instance of CQ to host all those 800 sites, or each site having its own?
No, these are mostly, out of the 800 sites, most of them are very low traffic. It's just this wide, long.
Couple of pages, so it's bandwidth for that is relatively
Well,
small.
some of these sites are hundreds and hundreds of pages,
Right.
And then there's very small sites and everything in between. What our current structure is: one author, and that may change, two production or publish, and then two dispatchers. Then we'll just add dispatchers as needed, and then we'll load balance that. So that's and that'll be done. That was on.
So are you planning to scale? I guess how are you planning to scale up the infrastructure for in terms of like server boxes and stuff like that? Or are you planning to have the author, the two publish, and then scaling the dispatchers support all 800 sites? Like, do you see that as
The traffic, it should. We get only 4 million page views a month. So if we need to add load balancing or dispatchers and load balance that, I think that's not an issue. I'm most worried about the author. 900 authors, how many of them are going to be concurrent? Well, probably more than 20.
Yeah.
Maybe 40.
I was wondering about that.
So somehow,
That freaks me out.
we're going to have to have some kind of way of dealing with the author instances. That's my main concern.
Are you guys, so is there just a whole bunch of dispatcher caching going on because you mentioned scaling the dispatcher side, depending on how many page views you get? Because, for example, for our infrastructure, we have 2 public servers, 2 dispatchers, or 2 public servers and then a couple web servers with dispatcher on them, and then a load balancer above that. But I don't think that we hit anywhere near 4 million page views a month at this time. But we saw like uptake, and depending on how much happens in your CQ server, we have found a lot of issues in terms of load times based on going back into the publish server and coming back. So are you guys just implementing caching right off the bat, or?
Yeah, caching, dispatcher fully cached, and probably we have scripts that once we activate, it will basically, there will be a script that goes through and
spiders the site so everything gets cached. So even the first-time user, unless they feed our spider, will have a cached experience. And this is the beauty of having a non-commercial type of site. Is like Jason said, it's a lot of static stuff at the end of the day, and so it's easy to cache. And so we'll wait until our friends at Adobe fix up, user-generated content stuff, and that's something we're looking forward to. So we don't have a lot of it.
What about Richard Media? You guys, in terms of some of the things we've seen is, the author's doing a lot on with the dam and resizing, and if somebody uploads a 50 gigabyte video or video.
So that's actually a very good question. So they are not uploading any video within the CQ environment. We have Cultura, which is third-party hosted, that all our videos are uploaded into Cultura.
It may temporarily store it, but so the whole experience of uploading and using video will be kind of like using scene 7 before integrated, but it's not going to be hosted or rendered or transcoded there. For large images, this is an infrastructure question that gets to solve. Our current plan is probably to just offload that job and put it on this service instead of this. Because anybody could kill our whole authoring experience if it wasn't part of it.
We've seen that with clients where like somebody uploads a 50 gigabyte video from a conference and it just gets stuck in the queue.
For us, it's taking a conference, 100 images and still getting the problem for
And trying to add to the video experience, it's grabbing the embed code from their video and putting it into the CQ environment. So it's being called from a completely different environment, which for us is very nice because it won't bring our environment down.
on CDN. It's
I'm just curious, so what's the team look like?
There's you two.
That's it. We're doing it all.
So my team is 7 or 8 people. I have to go back and check. So Jason owns the community authoring experience. We actually more than that. We have about 4 to 6 developers at any given time helping us really get the architecture, the integrations, and templates and components. I'll have an ongoing. I'll probably have about 1 entity developer to help us kind of with minor development. And then I have a support person who will be at the support desk. Actually, 2 people that will span that, and a couple. I'll have a web author that will manage the home pages and CQ, talk to you home pages, and then I have a web strategist that worries about content and UX, and I have a designer who works designs components and so forth. And then I'm hiring someone temporarily to help us with migration. Join us in a couple of weeks, and that person will own these good questions about migrating off the checklist, what's the past, and all this stuff. So that's having someone I could.
Then Rail and Daryl.
Yeah, then we have a whole data center team, so we're training people up on system admin. Actually, we're training 4 people, half people on system admin, people on system admin.
So who have the CQ ranks? Do you have internal knowledge?
No, we bought. I got it on a USB key, and I put it in a drawer for 2 months. And I chose the platform, negotiated with the hospital to share the same, not the same instance, but the same platform. And, but yeah, we had to basically start from scratch. Everyone could train. So our training was pretty good straight out of the building.
So you've done that, the team's done full standard development.
Yeah, that's C++. Class. It doesn't tell you how to do it, well, just put Adobe CQ. Well, these are references way on the side, but
The demo's really long.
yeah, demos.
I didn't hear any Java developers.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry. We have these 5 or 6 developers, and half of them are Java gurus. I would say. Three, 4, 4. So 4. We have 2 Java, I'd say 4. Deep JavaScript.
entire bundle that you have? How much work is it?
I would say we only have about 2 built right now. We'll probably end up with half of this. We have some integration tools with all of those, with our profiling system, events. Talked about 2/3 recently. We'll have less than a dozen for sure. We're not sure about third parties, and we're going out, we're looking around, trying to share not as much out there. But, you know, we may pull some of that app and stuff, so anything that we can track, we might do a package for packages. Point to pull out the bill.
Has there been any challenge in the bundles?
It's just, no, we build in bundles. I mean, we build in Maven, you know, just externally, so we use the Java tool.